Hi, my name's Jessica, and thanks for watching today. Before we get started, we wanted to fill you in on our church. Here at Grace, we have a mission and a purpose. Our goal is to help people discover truth, decide on Jesus, demonstrate change, and deploy for others. If you're looking for a church, we would love for you to come and be a part of what God is doing here at Grace. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. We would also like to invite you to one of our Sunday morning services. Check out ohiograce.com for a list of campuses and service times in your area. We have a great time gathering for music, hanging out, and learning about who God is and how that affects our lives. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you here next week at Grace.
All right. Well, got a lot to talk about this morning, so listen, we're gonna jump right back into our No Fear series, week 2. Last week, Pastor Luke dug into our first week in our No Fear series by looking at the fear of God. And this week, we transitioned to a new one that I'm going to be straight up with you guys. I think every single person from in the room all the way over here to your left, my right, to all the way across the room, I think every single person in here has dealt with the fear that we're going to talk about this morning. And I would say this, the fear specifically we're going to talk about this morning, I think a lot of people, it's caused like heavy anxiety, it's caused stress, worry, and I'll be straight up with you guys, I think that it has stopped people from just enjoying life in general. It's something that it like grips people to where they can't even function on a day-to-day basis, and they struggle always thinking about this fear. And the fear that we're going to be digging into that I think every single person has struggled with is the fear of death. The fear of death, okay? Now, when I found out a few weeks ago, Pastor Luke's like, hey, AJ, you're going to be covering the topic or the fear of death. He gave that to me and kind of was praying and thinking about it. Man, I'm gonna share with you guys. I've done some pretty adventurous and crazy things in life. Okay, I'm an outdoorsman. I love to hunt and fish. I mean, that's like I love to do that stuff. And with that, you do some kind of edgy things. One of those things is that I would say has given me a little bit of fear, the fear of death. Has been several years ago, I went on an elk hunt in the mountains of Colorado by myself, which I don't know if you've ever done that before, but you're like in a tent in the middle of the night, you hear like a little twig pop, and instantly your thoughts are like, that is a bear or a mountain lion coming to eat me right now. And then you zip open the tent, and what do you see? You see a squirrel, okay? And that's all that it is, all right? So, but I remember getting a little bit fearful during that. Another time I have been a little fearful, but it's a lot of fun, is we do a little shout out for all of our high schoolers. We do these crazy trips that we get away and we do things like out in nature, and we really challenge them in their walk with Jesus and sharing their faith. And one of those trips, it's called Alpine. We go down the mountains of West Virginia, and we do whitewater rafting, caving, and I can tell you there were some times and some moments that I was a little fearful of dying. Not a lot. I was more worried about the high school guys that just act, quite frankly, like idiots a lot of times and do some dumb things. Worried, oh gosh, don't do that, chill out. But no, I will tell you guys in all honesty, there was a time in my life that I did this fear of dying hit me. And so, it's always good when we go back to high school days. And so I'm going to go back to high school AJ, all right? We're going back way, way back when. And I grew up in the Clyde Green Springs area. And at that time, I had dated a girl that lived in Norwalk, whose name we're going to leave anonymous. We're not going to mention that. I remember I was dating this girl for a little while, and I told my mom, I was like, hey, Mom, I'm going to go over to this nameless girl's house over in Norwalk. And she was like, no, you're not tonight. And I was like, Mom, I'm 17 years old, okay? I'm a grown-up, okay? I can make my own decisions in life. And she's like, okay, that's nice. You're not going over to your girlfriend's house tonight. And so we fought about it, and I just want to throw this out there. AJ said some choice words that were not good. Now, I can tell you this, that was before I was a Christian, all right, before I gave my life to Jesus. And so I didn't do that until I was 20 years old, but I said some things when I was 17 to my mom in the kitchen that I never should have said. And the fear of death hit me when my mom, who's like 5'3", 100 and none of your business weight, took her hand and put it straight up across my face, okay? I had the fear of death that hit me right then, okay? No, honestly, I was a little worried, but no, I knew I was going to die. But seriously, though, reeling it back in, I think all of us, to some extent in our life, we've feared dying, or maybe another way to look at it is you fear different aspects of dying. And so I know for me, I'm going to give a few examples here, but of different aspects that people have of dying. But for me, I'll be sharing with you a fear of dying that I have. One of the aspects of that is this, man. I don't want to miss out on things in my family's life. And so I've got a couple pictures up here of my family. We got Marissa, my wife, and then my son Baylor and Kinley. And I'm just going to give you guys a couple things here that I don't want to miss out on, okay? When my precious little princess, Kinley, I don't want to miss walking her down the aisle when she's like 50 years old, okay? There's no circumstance or situation that I'm not going to be there to do that as a dad, except for if I die. And I'm going to be honest, I do not want to miss that. Or for my son Baylor, we like to do all things outdoors. Like I said, I'm an outdoorsman, love to do a lot of stuff. And man, I'm looking forward to the day, hopefully a little while down the road, that Baylor gets married and has kids, and maybe he's got a couple boys, and I can say, hey, Baylor, get the boys, like get the grandkids, we're gonna jump in the truck this weekend, and we're gonna go on a deer hunt, or we're gonna go fishing for a couple days. Grandpa's got it, I'm paying for the entire bill. I cannot wait to do that down the road. And the only way that that's not gonna get to happen is if I die. For my wife, I want to be there for my wife through the ups and downs of life, through the struggles, through the good and the bad times. I want to grow old together with her. I love her. I want to be the only guy that she ever asked, hey, babe, will you open up the pickle jar? I got this. Bam, pop it open, right? Still flex and show the muscles. I want to be the only guy that gets to do that. But maybe for you, when it comes to death, the aspect of death that you fear is you fear the unknowns. You fear what that process looks like. Is it an instant death? Is it a long, drawn-out thing? Am I 95 in my deathbed and it's peaceful? Or is it a tragic event? Is it something I'm going to be suffering with for a long time? For some, myself included in this, there's a fear of death because those of us that are believers, we have people in our lives, in our families and friends and people we work with that don't know Jesus yet. And we want to be part of that process of them coming to Jesus, or we at least want to be there to witness it and see them come to Jesus. And man, we fear like, man, if I die, like who's going to tell Jesus about them? Maybe for some of you here, and I know there's got to be some people in a room this full that fit this category, but you would say, man, AJ, I fear death because I don't know what happens after I take my last breath. You guys talk about heaven and hell as pastors, and the reality is I don't know where I'm going, and so maybe that's where you're at. It's a legit fear. So if we have the fear of death or different aspects of the fear of death, what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to do what we do every single week here at Grace. When Pastor Luke or myself get up and we teach from the Word of God, and what we're going to do is with our struggling with this fear of death and wrestling with this, we're going to go to the only thing that's going to bring us hope and help. We're going to go to God's Word. Now, if you do have this fear of death, aspects of dying, just want to throw this out to you, okay? Great news for you today. You're in the right place, but great news, okay? You would make an awesome disciple if you're not one already, okay? And the reason why I say that is because the disciples wrestled with this as well. If you go back to the scene, and we're going to actually talk a lot about this, but if you go back to the scene of when Jesus is going to the cross, and when he's on the cross, these guys that had followed Jesus for the last 3.5 years, they did life with him. We don't hear if they're there or if they are there. They're not vocal saying, hey, I stand with that man on the cross. They never announce that they're Jesus followers to the Roman guards. They just, either if they're there, they stay silent or they're somewhere else. Why? Why don't they speak up? Why don't they say, hey, the man that you're putting on the cross, that guy, Jesus, we're with him. We follow him. Why don't they stand up and do that? Well, it's really simple. It's because fear. They feared that what they were doing to Jesus on the cross, they may do to them. And so they do nothing. They don't speak up. And the reality of it is that's what fear does. It paralyzes. And so let's go back to your childhood days, okay? You're at the park, or at the pool with all your buddies, and you're there, you're having a good time, then you guys, it's time to go on the high dive, right? And what do? You get in line, and you go up on the high dive, you get to where, you walk the plank, you're going at the very end, your toes are just over the edge of the board, and you do what? You pause, right? You're paralyzed, right? You're in fear until eventually you get made fun of enough, and you finally decide to jump in. But that's what fear does. It paralyzes. What you got to know this morning, we're going to talk a lot about it, but the opposite of fear paralyzes, okay? The opposite of fear is actually faith. Fear paralyzes, but what does faith do? Faith always moves to action. When we put our faith in Jesus and what he did on the cross for our sin debt, it will always move us to action. Now, we don't have a lot of accounts of the disciples showing up before the cross or at the cross, but the one guy we do have is our guy Peter, who I would say he's probably more like Americans than any other disciple. Peter is the disciple he's always speaking out of turn. He's always running his mouth and not backing it up, making bold claims, but then in the heat of the moment, backing away from it. So here's kind of the context of Peter when he has this fear of death that we're going to look at this morning. He's been betrayed by Judas. Remember, Judas kissed him on the cheek, and that kind of lets the guards know, hey, this is Jesus. And so they shackle him, they take Jesus away, and the disciples, some of them are there. And as the guards are taking Jesus away, what does Peter do? He pulls out his sword. Peter was a great fisherman, not a great swordsman, okay? He's trying to chop off the head of one of the servants that are there with the high priest, and he totally misses a head, and he just gets an ear. And what does Jesus do? He's like, hey, pause, Peter, pause. He looks at Peter, and he's like, listen, this is God's desire, God's will for me, is to go to the cross so I can die for the sins of man. He grabs his ear, pops it back on, does the miracle. And he heals the guy. Then Jesus is arrested and goes to the cross. Now, another key thing to remember before we dig into this is before they go to the garden, they had the Last Supper. Remember, Jesus, the disciples are there. And Jesus says, hey, one of you guys is going to betray me. And what does Peter say? Jesus, hold on, let me speak up real quick. I would never betray you. I'll never deny you. I will be with you to the very end. That's key for what we're going to talk about in just a second. And Jesus tells him, that's not true, man. Before the rooster crows in the morning, before you hear that crow, you're going to deny me, not once, not twice, but 3 times. All right, so that's where we pick up John 18. Let's follow along, verses 15 to 18. It says this, Simon Peter, he was following Jesus, as was another disciple. That disciple was an acquaintance of the high priest. So he went with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard. But Peter remained standing outside by the door. So the other disciple, the one known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the girl who was the doorkeeper and brought Peter in. Then verse 17, this is the key verse. Here we go, ready? Then the servant girl who was the doorkeeper said to Peter, you aren't one of those man's disciples too, are you? Luke's gospel, it says it a little bit differently. Luke's gospel says that this girl said, hey, this man, this Peter guy, I saw him with Jesus. And what does Peter say? What's his response? I'll never deny you, Jesus. I'll be with you to the end. And what does he say? I am not. I'm not one of his followers. Verse 18, now the servants and the officials had made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were standing there warming themselves, and Peter was standing with them warming himself. You can hear it in the girl's question. She is totally surprised. As a young child, she said, man, I've seen you with him before. You're one of his disciples. I mean, it would be like this, okay? If there's any of you weird Michigan fans in here, I'm sorry, but we got to pick on you, okay? It'd be like this. For all of us awesome Ohio State fans, all right, it'd be like us. If you Michigan fans, you're up in Ann Arbor, you're up with the team up north, and you guys got a game, and it would be like all of us Ohio State fans showing up to the Michigan game, and we'd be wearing those disgusting colors and cheering on your team. I mean, let's call it what it is. That would be, like, even as a Michigan fan, you'd be like, okay, that's weird. Like, what are you guys? You'd be like, aren't you guys Buckeyes fans? I mean, like, you guys are the best team in the country, national championships. You don't cheat to win. I mean, you guys are it, right? We'll never be fans of the team up north. Why? Because we're committed Buckeyes fans, and we're better. So, how does Peter respond to this young girl? What does he do? In that moment, hey, you're not one of Jesus' followers. No, I'm not. He denies Jesus. Because why? Guys, because of fear. The fear of what they're doing to Jesus, what Jesus is about to face. He knows it. He doesn't want it to happen to him. It's crazy to think, but like even in this culture, a young girl's testimony, it couldn't even be upheld in court. But regardless, though, Peter denies knowing Jesus. But he doesn't stop there. He does it the first time, and then we pick up in verse 25. Now Simon Peter, he was standing and warming himself. And they said to him, you aren't one of his disciples too, are you? He has a chance. Listen, think about this. He has a chance. He messed up the first time. Peter's got a chance to just stop, face his fear, and say, I am a follower of Jesus. But again, what does he say? I'm not, man. He lets his fear of what might happen to him crush his faith in that moment. But he's got one more chance, man. Hopefully third time's a charm. One more chance. Verse 26. One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, said, didn't I see you with him in the garden? I mean, this guy's like, man, last time I saw you, you had a sword, and you cut my cousin's ear off, man. I know that was you. Like, you had the sword. It had to be you. And here we go. Is Peter going to get it right? No. Verse 27. Peter denied it again, and immediately a rooster crowed. Luke's gospel also says that at that moment, Peter denies Jesus, and he looks up, and off in the distance, Jesus is there, and he looks up, and they lock eyes, and Luke says that Peter went away weeping. I think he's realized the impact of what he's done. This happens just as Jesus said. The disciple that said, Jesus, you're my ride or die. I will always be with you. I will always support you. I will never deny you. I'll be with you to the end. That disciple does the very thing he said he would never do. Denies Jesus. Why? All because fear. Fear that he may be killed too. Fear of what following Jesus just might cost him. So he lets fear paralyze him into not making his faith and his commitment known. And isn't it crazy? That's kind of how fear works. It can deceive us. It can distort the truth. It can get us to do things that we're ashamed of. It can get us to not stand up for what we know is right. I mean, think about this. What did Peter experience in the last 3.5 years? I'm not going to name them all, but I'm just off the top of my head, I'm thinking, what did he see Jesus? He saw Jesus turn water to wine, a miracle. Right? He saw Jesus take a few loaves of bread and a couple little fish and feed thousands and thousands and thousands of people. He saw Jesus raise their friend Lazarus, who was dead for 4 days. He saw him speak out to Lazarus, and Lazarus got up. I mean, a massive miracle. He saw Jesus walk on water. Not only that, think about this. Peter walked on water. But he lets fear overcome him in the moment. And he doesn't say he's a follower of Jesus, but he denies him. Maybe for you, you're like, you're like Peter. You're fearful of maybe what comes when you die. You're fearful of the process of what that looks like. You're fearful of the unknowns. See, Peter lets his fear of death quiet out the promises that Jesus has already told him. He lets that fear rise up so much in him that he just forgets what Jesus had said. Guys, I just want to encourage you with this statement today. If that's you, don't let fear of what's next stop you from making a decision today to follow Jesus. Now, thankfully, in the life of Peter, we know this, but that's not the end of his story. Now, we're going to fast forward over a couple chapters here, or chapter and a half in chapter 20. But you probably know what happens. Jesus he's arrested. He's put on trial. They convict him of crime, again, something he did not do. And he goes to the cross, and he dies for our sin debt. But he doesn't stay dead. The greatest event ever in human history, which we celebrate every Easter, happens on day 3. The resurrection of Jesus. He gets up. And again, we'll talk about that at Easter down the road, more in depth. But Peter and another disciple, which is John, probably, they actually hear that the tomb is empty. And so what do? They go, they run to the tomb, and they look in, and they see, hey, the tomb's empty. Jesus isn't here. He sees the empty tomb. And I imagine this. Peter, he is ashamed, and he's probably wondering, like, man, what do I do now? He does some unique things. Check it out. John 21, verse 1-4, it says this. After this, Jesus, he had revealed himself again to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, also known as the Sea of Galilee. And he revealed himself in this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called twin, Nathanael from Cana of Galilee, Zebedee's sons, and 2 others of his disciples were together. And Simon Peter, that's what he says to the group. Hey, I'm going fishing. Hey, we're coming with you, they told him. They went out, and they got in the boat, but a professional fisherman, they caught nothing. Then verse 4, when daybreak came, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not know it was Jesus. Did you guys catch the first thing that Peter does after he goes and he sees the empty tomb? This is amazing to me. This is amazing. He goes back to his old way of life. He goes back to just doing what he did before Jesus. He goes and he finds his old nets that he hasn't touched in 3.5 years, and he picks them up and he decides, hey, we're going to go fishing. Now, if I was Peter, I would think, empty tomb, he's alive, Jesus alive. And so, man, I would think the natural response is this, man, I would just start telling everyone I know, hey, this Jesus who died, it's day 3, and he's got up, he's risen, and he's defeated death, hell, and the grave. He's alive. But he doesn't do that. He lets the fear win. Again, remember, it distorts the truth and makes things not clear. Next few verses in John chapter 21, Jesus tells Peter and the guys, they don't know it's Jesus at this time, but he tells them to cast their nets on the other side of the boat. They're fishing on the left side. He tells them, throw it over on the right side. And they haul in a massive load of 153 fish that were huge. John, after this happens, they bring the fish in, and John looks on shore, and he sees Jesus, and he knows that it's Jesus. And he's like, hey, guys, that's Jesus. And again, I love this. In very Peter-like fashion, he acts first, then he thinks later. And so he just swan dives into the water, 100 yards, swims ashore, runs up to go and to meet Jesus. What's amazing about this is it shows us a little bit more about how good God is. What does Jesus do in that moment? Peter runs up to him. Jesus tell him, hold on, man, you just pause real quick. Like, you denied me last time, you betrayed me. Like, get away. Like, no, stay away. He doesn't do that. He continues time and time again to show grace. He sits down with Peter and the other disciples. Eventually they come up. And he eats food with them. Shows us that he's a good father. And while he's sitting there, he's going to have a conversation with you. And I think it teaches us a great concept about Christianity, about God all throughout the Bible. And it's this, There's always more grace in Jesus than sin in you, no matter what. He's always willing to welcome and to bring you in. There's always more grace in Jesus than sin in you. As they're sitting there at the campfire, over that charcoal fire, Jesus asked Peter 3 different times the same question, essentially. He says, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And I imagine, Peter's going the first time, well, yeah, of course, Jesus, you know that I love you. Jesus says, okay, well, feed my sheep, tend my flock. He repeats it again a second time, and Peter's like, yes, Jesus, I love you. But then on the third time, something clicked. Something switched there, and he's sitting there, and Jesus asked him one more time, Peter, do you love me? And I think then Peter probably started putting 2 and 2 together, going, I denied him 3 times. He's asking this question 3 times. He knows, he gets it. So he says, yes, I love you. And Jesus tells him, feed my sheep. And I think this is kind of where Peter gets it, like where he goes from being like a kind of committed follower of Jesus to now he fully commits to surrendering his life to Jesus. In our next few verses, look at what it says. Jesus wraps this conversation up with Peter. He says this, 18 and 19, truly I tell you, when you were younger, you would tie your belt and walk wherever you wanted. But when you grow old, you're going to stretch out your hands, and someone else will tie you and carry you where you don't want to go. And this is important, verse 19. He said this to indicate by what kind of death Peter would glorify God. After saying this, he told him, follow me. It's odd to me how Jesus has this conversation with him. After Peter's like, yes, Jesus, I love you. I get it. I messed up. I denied you 3 times. I'm not going to do that again. I won't do it again. I messed up in fear, the fear of death, and I didn't say I was your follower. I was wrong. But then what does Jesus do? He tells Peter, okay, if you follow me, this is what kind of death you're going to die. And in verse 18, he says, when he says you'll stretch out your hands and someone else will tie you and carry you where you don't want to go, Peter knew exactly what kind of death he was referencing. He knew that he would be crucified. He knew that if he truly did follow Jesus and live for him, he knew at some point in his life he would die as a martyr, which came to be true. About 30 years after this conversation with Jesus, Peter dies not just crucified, but crucified upside down because he just won't shut up about Jesus. Think about it. At the first campfire, he denies Jesus because of fear. Fear of what they're going to do. Fear that they may put him on the cross. But now there's been a switch. See, the very thing that he feared, that is death on the cross, Jesus tells him, hey man, listen, if you follow me, I'm just telling you, it will cost. It's going to cost. Then in verse 19, he says this, man, Peter, if you get that, follow me. And church, after this conversation with Jesus, it was the defining moment in Peter's life. Just want to throw this out there. By no means is Peter perfect after this, but if you look in the life of Peter, after this, his ministries all throughout the book of Acts. I mean, God uses him in a crazy way to lead thousands of people to Jesus. And all throughout the book of Acts, we see him sharing his faith and telling people about Jesus. We see faith in action, because remember, fear paralyzes, but faith always moves. How was he able for the next 30 years, knowing what was ahead of him, knowing he would go to the cross and die, how was he able for 30 years to know, man, at any second, someone could kill me. At any second, someone could take my life for preaching about Jesus? I'll tell you how. Because of the hope of the resurrection. That's it. See, church, listen. If the tomb is empty, which it is, listen, anything is possible. The miracle of the empty tomb, it can't be done by any other God. It can't be done by religion. It can't be done by any person. It is literally an act of God. So any fear of death that we have, any aspect to that, any at all, our answer is this. It is the empty tomb. It's the fact that our Savior is alive. The empty tomb, it tells us that the story isn't over. The empty tomb tells us that we have hope. The empty tomb tells us that we have life and we can experience the abundant life according to John 10:10 here, but it tells us this, that we experience life for all of eternity, for all those that come to faith in Jesus. So this morning, man, maybe you have tons of questions. Maybe you've got fears inside your heart. You're worried about what's going to happen to you. You're worried about the process of dying. Maybe you're worried about the fact that you don't know where you're going to spend eternity after you die. After you close your eyes in death, where are you going to be after that? And that fear, it cripples you. You got to know this. You got to know this. Jesus in love died for you. Jesus in love, he died for you. He wants a relationship with you. He wants to forgive you. He does not want you to stay in your fear. He does not want you to stay there. He doesn't want you to stay crippled by your fear. That's literally a tool the enemy's using in your life. Book of John and earlier actually says that Jesus, he's talking to the disciples, he says he's going to prepare a place for those that are his followers. He's going to prepare a place for you. God tells us in 1 Timothy through Paul, chapter 2, verse 3 and 4, that he desires you to be forgiven. He desires to have a relationship with you. That's what he wants. He doesn't say, like if you've done this, he doesn't want you. That if you have this fear, he doesn't want you. That's not what it says at all. It doesn't matter what you've done. He wants a personal relationship with you, and God proved that by a little bit what we talked about this morning. God proved that by sending his son Jesus to die on the cross for you. Put your name in the blank. God sent his son Jesus to die on the cross for AJ. God sent his son Jesus to die on the cross. Put your name in the blank. He wants you, man. He wants your sin. He wants your fear. He wants your anxiety. He wants it all. One of the simplest, but in my opinion, most powerful verses on how we can enter a relationship with Jesus is Romans 10:9. I want you guys to follow along the screen behind me. This is it. You want to have a relationship with Jesus? This is the verse right here, man. Simple but powerful. If you confess your mouth that Jesus is Lord and you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, ready? You'll be saved. That's it. It's very simple. You believe that what Jesus did on the cross, it counted for you. And today, as we wrap up, listen, if that's you, if you're making that decision today to confess to Jesus, I'm making Jesus Lord of my life. I understand that what he did on the cross, it counted for my sin. And I'm believing that he got up 3 days later, doing the impossible, so I could have a relationship with him. If you make that decision today, or you have questions about that, after service, head back to room 1. Even they're going to do a closing song in just a second here. Head back to room 1. Myself or Pastor Luke will be there. It's in the back door. You'll see it back there. Go through. You'll see us in the hallway. I want to celebrate that with you. So do you believe? Maybe you don't have this fear of death of where you're going after you die. You know that's taken care of. You trusted in Jesus. You believe that what he did on the cross was for your sin. That's awesome. That's great. But you're still wrestling with different aspects of dying, missing out on things with the family, the unknowns, the process of death. Can I just encourage you real quick? You know where you're going. Philippians 1:21, Paul, he's writing this down, and it's one of the most powerful verses that talk about death, but it says, for me, he says, living is Christ, but to die is gain. He's saying this, man, all my fears can subside because I know this, the greatest thing that I could ever gain, ever in my entire life, when I close my eyes in death and I open them in heaven. Paul understood it, man. And listen, I know we picked on Peter a lot this morning, but I'm telling you, the dude, sure, he denied Jesus. Sure, he cursed Jesus that third time, Luke says. But after that, when he submitted his life to Jesus, he did incredible things. God used him in a huge way. What he found out was this. As he's martyred and he's crucified on that cross upside down, he found out, as we'll sing this song just a little bit, the battle's already been won. Sin debt's already paid for. Dying is gaining. Every battle we face, our sin, it's taken care of on the cross. Church, let's not live in the fear of death. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I pray you'd help us as we wrap up with this last song, tune our hearts to you, God, and anyone that has the decision to make, God, to follow you, I pray that, God, they would just surrender that to you today. God, I pray for the individuals in here that don't know you, that, God, they've had this fear of death in their heart. God, I pray that, God, you'd help them to know that they can have a relationship with you today just by surrendering their life to you and giving you the reins of their life and recognizing that what you did on the cross was for their sin. God, I pray that you'd encourage them to go back to room 1 out the back doors and talk to Luke or myself. God, we want to celebrate that with them or answer any questions they may have. God, for the believer in here that maybe fears different aspects of death and of dying, I pray that today, God, that we'd be recharged. We'd be reminded that, God, our sin's been paid for. We have a relationship with you. To not fear death, but, God, to trust in you. And know, God, again, in Romans 8:28-29, that you're working for your glory and to make us more like you, we pray, through every single situation, the good and the bad. We ask this in your Son's name, Jesus.
Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you here next week at Grace.